Huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. Happy Monday to all of you. It is April 7th. We are careening toward the NFL draft, which means today Dennis and I will continue talking prospects. We're going to look at our top 5 or 6-ish tight ends. Probably not a huge position that will go in your mock drafts. And then we are going to be looking at a 4-round rookie superflex mock we ran yesterday in the afternoon, taking a look at where some of the people are valuing players and taking players at this very moment, a couple of weeks prior to the draft. Talk about that. Dennis and I both in there as well. But, you know, it's the eve of the big kickoff game, Dennis. Do you have any first base coach jitters?
No, my job is just to make sure that nobody gets picked off of first base and to send them to second base if they hit it far enough. So it's we got 3 games this week, and it's supposed to be below 50 degrees for all of them with potential rain out on Thursday. Looks like the rain is past us. It's been not raining most of today. Had a little sprinkles this afternoon. Hopefully there was enough wind to dry the field out for tomorrow evening. And then we got our home field tends to be a little bit damp, so we don't have that field till Wednesday. So hopefully it can be a breezy day the next couple days, and the field will be in good shape.
Hopefully. Well, speaking of fields, let's talk about the field of tight ends. We talked quarterbacks and running backs last week. We'll talk wide receivers as we wrap up the positional groups on Friday. But today, tight ends. And this is a more interesting year than some because we have a couple of blue chip prospects at the top of this list that could very well be going at the top of the actual NFL draft. So, Dennis, I'm guessing you have 2 guys in your first tier.
Yeah, probably the same 2 that you have.
Yeah, probably in the same order.
Tyler Warren seems to be the guy this year with Colston Loveland. Unfortunately, he's a player that would be the guy in just about 9 out of 10 other years. But no, Warren, he's a big receiver. He's got prototypical size that you're looking for from a tight end. 6'5.5", 256. But he's versatile enough that, he runs the Wildcat. He does jet sweeps, has pretty good speed, very athletic, and he's super competitive. He's one of those guys that he feels like if he wasn't this athletic, he'd still be highly successful because of how competitive he is. So he does whatever is necessary to help his team. He'll run the Wildcat. He'll be the tush-push quarterback a la Mark Andrews if you need him. And as a former high school quarterback, he's willing to throw the ball as well. But he really wins as a receiver. He's quick to beat his man. He's got good speed. He can get up to speed. unfazed by contact at the catch point. So if you need to throw it to him in traffic, he'll go up and get it, and he'll battle his guy. He's just one of those guys that, you know, we got spoiled by what Travis Kelce can do. I don't know if that's an accurate comp for him, but it feels like he's a guy that if he turns out to be the next Travis Kelce, a lot of folks will be like, yeah, we saw that coming. I like him. His speed is good, but not great. So as a vertical threat, he can be a little bit lacking. But because of his ability to play through contact and battle at the catch point, I think he'll develop chemistry with whatever quarterback happens to get him. You're welcome, Daniel Jones. He seems to be mocked to the Colts in 8 out of 10 mock drafts that you see. Occasionally, he may go to the Bears at 10, a couple picks ahead of Indianapolis. So who knows? Maybe the Bears get a little cute and try to get
I've seen
Indianapolis.
Jets too. And, you know, you mentioned Loveland. I've seen some people actually have it Loveland, Warren. I think you and I both have it this way. But they're pretty close.
You could see it. You could see it in the long run shake out that way because either Loveland overperforms expectation or Warren slightly underperforms. It feels a little bit like that's, I don't know if clickbait's too strong, but it feels like, you know, when you look at everything, it feels like Warren's a slightly better prospect. But, you know, I suppose the argument could be made for Loveland at 1.
Well, I think there's a good chance both of them end up going in the first round of the NFL draft. And I think both of them would go in the first round of rookie drafts too. We'll look at our mock later. They did both go there. I have both up in my top 12 overall prospects.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the real NFL draft kind of jockeys the position for the players after Warren and Loveland. You know, Loveland, he's got really good play speed. He can vary what he does out there. He's got really good timing in his patterns, very strong hands. And he's not much of a blocker. So while maybe there's a little bit of willingness, you can tell it's not like his priority to focus on it. Loveland does really well with the route tree at all 3 levels of the game. So he does have maybe a little better long speed than Tyler Warren. I had a chance to see both of them up close. And by up close, I mean from my couch as they've played Ohio State. And Loveland killed Ohio State. It was very, very brutal. Now, there is some talk that was during the sign stealing era. And so some of those things maybe had a little unnatural assistance. But he's got really good feel in and out of his breaks to position against defenders. He's a mismatch for linebackers and maybe a little big for some safeties to handle. I like Loveland a lot. I think he's going to be successful in the NFL. You see him linked a little bit to the Chargers, and there is a relationship with Jim Harbaugh there. He's not going to be a guy. He's a little Mark Andrews-ish, I think, where he may be willing to block, but he's not necessarily great at it. He's a receiver. He's going to be somebody, if you draft him in your rookie drafts, you're not, playing in a point per block league. So you want him to get targets. And so you may have to be patient with him. He may go at the end of the first round, but he may not perform quite as well as you want in year 1. He's still going to have to learn the blocking phase of the game to increase his target opportunity. So I like Loveland a lot. He's my tight end 2 in this league, and I suppose at if I'm at 111, 112, I may be willing to take him over, tier 2 wide receivers, tier 3 or tier 4 running backs.
So that kind of, once you get past those two, I think that's where you and I differ a little bit. Anyway, I have what I would consider my next group to be Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo, and then at 5 for me, I have Harold Fannin Jr., and then kind of Terrence Ferguson and Gunnar Helm kind of in a grouping there. I saw you have a little bit different. And I will say Fannin to me is the hardest one. If you look at all the variety of opinions out there, there are some people that are in love with him, that talk about him as perhaps the sneaky best tight end in the class. There are other people that seem to have soured on him. ESPN, I think, has him like 8th among tight ends available, which I think is interesting. So I saw you don't have him a ton over me, but do you want to give your grouping to kind of finish out?
So I've got Elijah Arroyo at 3. I do have Fannin at 4. It feels like he may be the riskiest player that I have ranked right now. Mason Taylor at 5 and Thomas Fedone out of Nebraska at 6. Arroyo, he had a really good Senior Bowl, and he struggled with injuries early in his career. Good size, another 6'5" guy, but he's pretty fast. So I saw a thing. Jacob Gibbs on Twitter had this thing. The only NFL ball carriers who clocked faster than Elijah Arroyo's fastest time at the University of Miami in 2024 were Cavante Turpin, Brian Thomas Jr., Jahmyr Gibbs, Saquon Barkley, Nico Collins, and James Cook. So Elijah Arroyo peaked at 21.8 miles per hour on a route in college in 2024. That's difference-making speed. And when you kind of look at sort of what he did catching the ball at the Senior Bowl, I'm not drafting a tight end to, go out there and block. This feels like he could be a Mark Andrews kind of tight end. Maybe he goes in the 3rd round to a place where they've got, a blocking tight end and they need a guy. And because of the time he's missed with injuries, and maybe some inconsistency in Ward's game, it may be that I might be out over my skis. But he's confident in the middle of the defense. He looks for openings in zones and seems to be able to sit down and get him. He's got very good hands. Comes off the ball with his pads low. So when he's blocking, he's getting down and hits his defender. And he played for a head coach who prioritized blocking effort. So while he may not necessarily be an ace at blocking, the effort's there, and that's going to give him some snaps. He only had 11 games in 22 and 23 because of a knee injury. But I'm willing to take that shot because I want to have a tight end that's catching the ball. And it seems like that's what Elijah Arroyo's role is going to be in the NFL, is pass catcher. So I've got him at 3. Harold Fannin, he to me feels the riskiest. He had a great 2024 in college, but he was at Bowling Green, and some of these games may be maybe fool's gold. He seems tight in his hips and his lower body, very stiff-legged in his running. But he put up numbers, and teams are going to give him an opportunity. It feels like after the top two tight ends, they could be all over. And while, I've got my four of Arroyo, Fannin, Taylor, and Fedone, we could see some tight ends that we don't see coming be drafted ahead of some of these guys because teams are looking for blocking tight ends. And, we might go back and look at the numbers, and we have to be careful not to sell ourselves on some of these tight ends that get drafted over these pass catchers because they're being drafted to block. And we're going to have to be really careful. Fannin is really good at high pointing the ball. He's got good size. He's got really good hands. And so if he can, if he can avoid the curse of late stage Zach Ertz and what was Witten's first name?
Jason
Witten. All I could think of was Jacob. He moves a little bit sometimes like the late career Jason Witten and Zach Ertz. And so we just want to watch what's going on with him and see. But, he did put up numbers in college. Mason Taylor comes in with a pedigree, and he's really good at catching the ball. He's a natural mover, awesome athleticism, can run the full route tree, and he's got good speed to run the seam and create mismatches. He handles contact when he's going for the ball, so he won't get distracted if he's getting bumped. Good extension with natural hands. So, but he does kind of, he gets up to speed in his route and doesn't vary a lot. So, that'll be something that he's going to have to learn. Because he's at one speed, defenders can kind of time up the route against him and make plays. He needs to commit to being a better blocker to get more snaps. But I would hesitate and say I don't want him on the field because he's a blocker. I want him on the field because he's getting targets. And then probably the one that caught you most off guard, Thomas Fedone out of Nebraska. The numbers weren't great at Nebraska, but also I think the passing game wasn't super good at Nebraska either. He's got really good athleticism, 2 years of game experience because of injuries early in his career. He's an explosive leaper, and he varies his route a little bit. And he is maybe not necessarily explosive speed. He has great build-up speed, and then he can get off the ground to go get the ball. He can run complex routes. In the blocking game, he's good at centering up on his target, being able to put effort into his blocks, but he is going to have to put on a little bit of weight to be able to sustain some of those blocks. But again, I'm going to go back to I want him catching the ball, not blocking. So don't put on too much weight. But he's a really good route runner, and he's going to have, I think, he's a guy that might go a little bit later in the draft that could climb up into a starting role and establish himself as a pass-catching tight end.
Yeah, and I will say, if you want to learn a little bit more about these guys, look at their stats and look at some of the history of their progression through college football, campus to Canton. We put out the rookie guide today. There are 75 plus rookie profiles. Contributing writers include our friend Matt Bruning and Dwight Peebles. and I had the privilege of reading through and helping to edit some of the profiles that's available on the site today. They have some tier rankings. They even have your boy Thomas Fidone in there. So all the kind of running backs, quarterbacks we've been talking about, they have their stats from the history of their college career write-ups from 22 and 23, if available, from their college projection and profile, and then as they head into the draft. So that's just another tool for you guys to be looking out for, is available to acquire off the site now. I'm getting excited about drafts. I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, I had a few questions in some of my leagues about when our drafts are being scheduled, to which I had to reply, I don't know, when are your dues going to be paid?
Yeah, I have scheduled all of mine, but and then we'll start a torrent in May. And if you're like us and you're ready for drafts, then this next part of the show is going to be for you, because we did a 4-round mock rookie draft, looking at some potential landing spots for players. So I'm going to let that take the full screen here. Our friend Jacob, who's in our Dynasty League, led things off. I know the clock counted down on him and Otto took Janty. He seemed a little upset about that, but I have to be honest, I think that would be 101 for me in all formats, as we talked about running backs. So that made quite a bit of sense. I don't know if you think any differently. Even in Superflex, I would think he would probably go number 1.
There's going to be the odd selection of Cam Ward or maybe Ted McMillan, but yeah, while I said 8 out of 10 when talking about Loveland and Warren, I have to go up to 100 with this, because probably 95, 96 out of 100 drafts are going to go Genty, it feels like.
That's probably the case. Second pick, Ted McMillan went, then Cam Ward going third. I was picking fourth. I went with Omarion Hampton, who was my number 2 running back, who I also think has a decent chance of going to the Broncos. Not that didn't weigh in effectively for me. I actually picked the 104 slot because I have a Dynasty startup I'm doing right now with our friend John Hamlers, who is also in this rookie draft at pick 6, where I am going to have pick 4 in the rookie draft. So I started trying to think strategically about how I would draft if I was drafting for that team, and running back is certainly something I would be looking at. No surprise, your number 2 running back's Travion Henderson. You took him at 5. So I think this top 5 is about what I would expect the 5 players to be, maybe in some different order. How do you feel?
I agree. I took 5 to see if Henderson was going to be there. That was really what my target is. I've got a couple drafts where I'm at 105. And so, I like Henderson for his dual threat ability and his explosiveness. If he could get somewhere where he could be used similar to Jahmyr Gibbs, I think that would be phenomenal. I like Omarion Hampton just fine. He's my 3. And if Henderson had went 4, I'd have taken Hampton at 5.
Let me tell you, if the Broncos take Henderson, that's who I would have taken too. But right now, I feel like Hampton's who they're going to take. And I already had him, we did the running back show slightly ahead. So I just followed where I'm at right now.
Yeah. I mean, I would, Genty, McMillan, Ward, Hampton, Henderson, it feels like it's pretty close to written in ink, I think.
Well, our friend John was next. He took Colson Loveland. I wouldn't be shocked to see a tight end go there. I think most of the time it would probably be Warren. Our friend John, a pretty solid Michigan fan. He piped in Go Blue after making that selection, so not a shock.
Really? I thought he was a Buckeye fan because he drafts so many Buckeyes. Got to be honest, I'm pretty disappointed in him.
Maybe it's both. He said Go Blue when he in the draft chat. I've noticed.
I don't think it was sarcasm. I think it was because he drafted Loveland, probably. But no, I think he's a Buckeye fan.
At 7, Emeka Ibuka goes. Dynasty PJ works with me at Campus to Canton, does a ton of college and NFL leagues. I thought that was an interesting pick. I think wide receiver beyond McMillan feels like the top 5 or 6, everyone has a different order. I'm going to be excited when we talk about that on Friday. But, I've seen people that like Hunter as that number 2 receiver, people that like Burden as that number 2 receiver. Some people even really like Matthew Golden, but Ibuka is always up there as well. What did you think of that selection?
Well, I'm a big Emeka Ibuka fan, and I laugh when I look at a lot of sites that do player comps, and everybody comps him to Jackson Smith and Jigba. I don't think it's inaccurate. I just think it's funny because they both played here. But I think Ibuka, he's in that new prototype of wide receiver, that 6 foot 200-pounder. He slides right in there. I think he's 6 foot 206, and he just is a magnet. The ball, he's got great hands, very good route runner. He's got some speed. He ran, I think, a 4.48 at his pro day. Take that for what it's worth. But I think he's going to be successful along the lines of Jackson Smith and Jigba and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think he profiles, I think, as a guy that is going to spend the majority of his time in the slot, but he'll be able to slide outside and be effective in a limited number of snaps out there. So it wouldn't surprise me if he's somewhere between 60-40 and 75-25 slot versus out wide. But he's we just talked about the tight ends. So Loveland and Warren going at 6 and 8. I think most often they'll be switched, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Loveland actually more in the
11-12 range.
Yeah. But it's if it's a tight end premium, I think it makes sense. I think they both slide up a little bit. I would see Warren potentially going in the top 5 in tight end premium leagues, depending on team situation, what their team looks like. So,
and I do wonder. I think John, our friend at Pick 6, is drafting out of the slot that he will be in the rookie draft in the league that we're in as well, and that is tight end premium. I started that startup with probably the most Dennis combination of all time. I took Brock Bowers and Trey McBride in my first 2 picks, so I'm gonna have to get everything else now, but I'm good at tight end. The rest of the first round, we get Luther Burden, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders going at 11, Quinshon Judkins. So that gives a first round, 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, 4 running backs, 4 receivers, pretty balanced. What do you think of the players that go in the first round and the balance? Does this feel about right to you for where we are a couple weeks out of the draft?
The most questionable pick, I think, in drafts right now is Travis Hunter. And it's just because we don't know. Like, he's got the potential to be, an all-pro cornerback or an all-pro wide receiver. I wish I could remember where I saw it, but I saw somebody basically comp him. They said, look, as a defensive back, he's Richard Sherman. I think he's faster than Sherman, but that kind of tenacity. And he's what, 6'1", 210. So he's got 6'2", 210. He's got good size. I forget what the comp was at wide receiver, but I think we see him play wide receiver. He could be a real difference maker there for any team. And it's hard to not want him to play offense as a fantasy manager. And if some team drafts him, if Cleveland drafts him at 2 and announces him as a wide receiver, it wouldn't surprise me to see him go in front of Hampton and Henderson.
Yeah. Well, what's confounding too is at the combine, he went with the cornerbacks and did all the cornerback drills. And at his pro day, all he did was wide receiver drills to do cornerback stuff. So he's not making it any easier.
Right. It's going to come down to the team that drafts him and how they decide to implement him. And I wouldn't expect a team to not use him on a side of the ball. It's just going to be like, what's it going to be like? Is it going to be, 80-20 offense? Is it going to be 80-20 defense? It's a conundrum. Luther Burden is running hot and cold. Some people love him. Some people hate him. Some of the knocks on him are that he's, a lot of line of scrimmage stuff, not separating good, isn't doing himself a lot of favors in interviews. I don't know. It feels like, to me, taking Travis Hunter out of the mix, I think Burden feels like he's got maybe a little bit safer floor than Matthew Golden. I think Golden will be a little more of a deep threat, though. And I would probably have Golden and Burden in the same tier, and probably Ibuka as well. So to me, it'll come down to draft capital might shake that out a little bit. We've seen the last couple of years with guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and Romo Dunze and even Michael Penix that, when a player is drafted and the path to volume has some roadblocks in it, it causes them to drop a few spots in the rookie draft. Quinshon Judkins and Caleb Johnson are both guys that I could see going late in the first round. They're very, I think, similar in what we expect out of them productivity-wise. And Shadir Sanders, for, lack of a better draft class, he's the number 2 in this class. He could potentially, I saw him, somebody compare him to Baker Mayfield the other day. And again, he's a guy, I don't think that he's immobile. I just think he doesn't run. And because he makes plays with his arm isn't the strongest. But we also have seen lots of offenses don't require you to have Josh Allen's arm to be very, very successful. So I think, if given an offense that doesn't allow him to get besieged by defensive pressure, I think he can be successful in the NFL. What his ceiling is, I'm not 100% sure yet.
So in the second round, our friend Jacob kicked off with Jackson Dart. He had said he considered whether or not he would go quarterback at 101. Likely, if you're at the kind of 101 position, quarterback may be an area of need. Dart was the one that we both felt was kind of number 3 there. Then Caleb Johnson goes pick 2. Makes sense if you need a running back. Trey Harris went at 3. I, at 4, went with Matthew Golden. I have him in my top 5 for receivers. I thought that was pretty decent value going there. Could be more of a deep threat. I felt pretty good about that. And then you getting Dylan Sampson right there. So what do you think of the top half of the second round?
So when the draft started, I was driving. And so it was, I had to actually pull over and swap seats with my wife so she didn't get stressed out, because you shouldn't draft and drive. So when I saw your text like, hey, you're on the clock, I was like, God damn it, shit. But I was happy with Henderson. That's who I wanted. I like the pick of Sampson. He's in my 3rd tier. He's there with Judkins, Johnson, and Basil. Do you pronounce it Basil Tootin or Basil Tootin?
I think it's Baishul.
Baishul Tootin.
But that's a good question.
They're all in that same tier for me. And so I did go with Sampson there as the RB5 off the board. That's where he is in my rankings. After I looked around a little bit, honestly, I think I might, if I hadn't been a little scattered from driving and making the seat switch and whatnot, I think I might have went Jaden Higgins there. Uh, he's coming on. I like him a lot as wide receiver 7. I think that's, at or above where I may have him. Um, and again, he's team big wide receiver. Uh, but I do like Sampson. I think he's a good back. He's got a nose for the end zone. He's, what is he, 5'8", 200. So he's not overly big, but I think he's a good all around back. He I think profiles as a back that's going to work in a duo, so, a la Aaron Jones kind of. So I don't hate that. RB7, I think that's kind of where I would have him. So
Six RB6.
6 RB6.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's right about where you had him in your.
Yeah, I had him at 5. So
there you go. Then after that, our friend John grabbing Jalen Milroe. That's an interesting pick. There's been a lot of movement. Supposedly had great workouts that impressed both the Browns and Saints. A lot of belief starting to bubble up that the Browns are not going to take a quarterback at number 2, maybe either going with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, but they would come back around at the top of the second round, maybe grabbing a player like Milroe there. What do you think of, this is a super flex draft. It's not a deep quarterback draft. I felt like middle of the second was about right for a prospect like Milroe that we think might have some upside.
Milroe is one of those guys that is the quote unquote, it just takes one team. I could see, if Dart goes off earlier than expected, he's one of those guys that somebody may gamble on his athleticism. Maybe he had a great workout with him, and quarterback coach and the offensive coordinator, his issues aren't stuff that we can't fix. He doesn't have any of his issues any different than what who's in
Anthony Richardson?
No. In Philly.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. Man, I don't know what it is with my memory tonight. Maybe my blood sugar is low. He doesn't have any issues Jalen Hurts didn't have, and that worked out just fine. So, I think in a rookie draft, super flex draft, I think that's a good spot for him. I don't think in a tight end premium league, I don't think we're really going to see any tight ends come up higher than this pick. So it wouldn't, you're going to have to be in love with one of the running backs or Jaden Higgins, I think, to justify not taking him in this area.
And speaking of running backs, and we talked about on Friday, we thought that with the depth of the class, even if there wasn't maybe the attractive top end that some other classes have had, with the depth, that they would pretty well dominate the second round. And that's certainly what happens back in here. We get Cam Scatterbo, Devin Neal, Ollie Gordon, Damian Martinez. Your boy Jaden Higgins does go at 211, and then DJ Giddens to round it out. So we get 5 of the last 6 picks being running backs, and then we get our wide receiver 7 in Higgins. So 5 plus 6. So we've had 11 running backs, 4 quarterbacks, 7 wide receivers, and just the 2 tight ends through 2 rounds. Is that about kind of what you would expect with this class heading into the draft?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the talk that's been going on with this class has been centered around the depth at running back. And it's a good enough class that the guy I have at RB10 didn't even get drafted. So, and maybe his NFL draft capital will warrant that. It wouldn't be the first time I missed on a guy. I like Devin Neal. He's got good size. I like Cam Scatterbo. He's a Montgomery-esque type, big bodied, very versatile. Not great speed, but good enough that he isn't going to turn. He may not turn a 10-yarder into an 80-yarder, but he'll turn a 3-yarder into a 10-yarder over and over and over again. Ollie Gordon, he had a monster. It's weird because like Chuba Hubbard had a monster season and then came back and really caused his draft stock to nosedive. Ollie Gordon had a monster season, went back, caused his draft stock to nosedive. It's just weird that both of them were at Oklahoma State, and it's not like they changed coaches. It was under Mike Gundy. I like Damian Martinez. I think he's a guy that profiles maybe as Jordan Howard with some plus pass catching chops versus Jordan Howard, not necessarily as a plus pass catcher, just better than Jordan Howard. DJ Giddens was in that same tier with Martinez, so that's right in line. I think Higgins will be, when we drop our top 25, I think Higgins will be ahead of some of these running backs for me. So I think to me, I think Higgins is one of the better values at this point in the
Yeah, not going to my friend Colin, who was one of the founders of Campus to Canton. I know that he was pretty active in the chat. He liked some of the players that were falling to him there at 11. In the third round, a place where you're going to take some shots and try to look for some value. Makes sense in a super flex draft. We get 3 more quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers goes in the 2 hole. Will Howard goes at 6. I kind of like what John is doing there at 6. Gives himself a couple of quarterback shots after getting a tight end that he liked. And then Dylan Gabriel goes at 9. We had a couple more running backs by Shul Tootin going at 10 and Woody Marks at 12. And then we had a couple more tight ends, first time since the first round. All 3 of the guys we talked about a little bit earlier, Harold Fannin, Elijah Arroyo, and Mason Taylor all go in this round. And then a couple more receivers. Xavier Restrepo goes at the top of the 3rd round. Isaiah Bond goes to you at 305. Jalen Noel at 307. Alec Ayomanior, I'm sure I butchered that, at 308. Any surprises for you in the 3rd round? Were you pretty excited when Bond fell to you? Is that a guy you were looking at?
Well, I was looking at receiver because I went running back, and then when I didn't realize Higgins was there in the 2nd, I was like, oh, I should look. Bond kind of caught a little flack because he was talking. He was going to be faster than Xavier Worthy. And he was almost as slow as me. But he wasn't near as slow as Xavier Restrepo. I think Bond is a fairly complete receiver. He's not super big, but he's got pretty good hands. He runs pretty good routes. I think in the 3rd round, the fact of the matter is these guys in the 3rd round are dart throws. Heck, most of the 2nd round is going to be dart throws for fantasy production. So you're looking at wide receivers. For me, I'm taking a shot on a wide receiver, probably more so than a running back. If I'd have been towards the end of the 1st or the end of the 3rd here, I don't mind Baishal Tootin because he does bring a ton of speed to the game. The concern with Tootin is that he might get locked into a return role because of that speed and limiting his touches because of the turnover issues. Woody Marks he's a big PPR back, so he could easily slide into a role with one of these teams where he's the 3rd down, 2-minute, 4-minute running back, and he becomes productive in that role. We'll have to see how the tight ends work out. These are our next 3 tight ends, and they all have some pass catching upside. Let's see how, I think by and large, I think we may be a little higher on, I think when it's all said and done, I may end up with Taylor over Fannin. I already have Arroyo there. So, Fannin may end up being the 5 for both of us. Yep. The quarterbacks, it's going to be interesting to see. Um, Quinn Ewers came into college as quite a ballyhooed prospect and never quite lived up to his reputation. Will Howard started a lot of games, played 5 years, had a great playoff run for Ohio State. It's going to come down to, can he keep it going when he gets to the NFL? I see a little bit of Ben Roethlisberger in Will Howard's game. Uh, Maybe that's because he physically is similar to what Roethlisberger was, 6'5", 240. But I think Howard's got to get more consistent with his ball placement. And if he can do that, he's got some opportunity. Dylan Gabriel, he's a guy I probably shy away from a little bit because I tend to not like 5'10" quarterbacks. But one of the things that portends quarterback success in the NFL is playing in a lot of games. And Gabriel played in 60 games and started most of them. So, the opportunity is there for him to have enough experience to be able to translate it to the NFL if he gets in the right system. We've seen some shorter guys be successful. Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Tua Tagovailoa. So even Kyler Murray's had some success. So the opportunity is there if Dylan Gabriel lands in the right spot.
Yeah, and then fourth round, you're just taking some dart throws. For me, at 4-4 being super flex, I had mentioned last Tuesday when we did our quarterbacks, Kyle McCord, a guy I might take a flyer on later in the draft. Curious to see where he ends up going in the NFL draft, if he has a shot somewhere. So I thought, at this point in time, Superflex, Smock, it made sense to take kind of a YOLO shot there. You end up with Jack Beck. Be curious your thoughts on that, and anything else that stands out to you kind of in the last round.
So, to me, Jack Beck and Xavier Restrepo are kind of the same guy. Just Beck is faster. But Beck is a really, really good route runner. He profiles as a slot guy, a PPR guy. And in the fourth round, I'm looking for a guy that could be flexible as a PPR receiver. And I think Beck profiles that way. I like Kyle McCord, a former Buckeye. He has some issues with handling pressure, but he's got a good arm and he's a pretty accurate passer. And I may have taken him if he had actually dropped to me. Oops, just realizing I forgot to plug my computer in when I set up here. So I like the McCord pick. I don't think Riley Leonard is draftable as an NFL quarterback. I just don't think he has the arm.
What stood out to me, we had talked about it a little bit on the quarterback episode, and that was Tyler Shug, who seems like he's all over the board in people's rankings, does not end up going in this draft. Rourke ends up being what I believe is the 10th quarterback that goes here. Rourke and Leonard end up going. And some people think Tyler Shug can end up going much higher in the NFL draft than we were expecting. Apparently had a really incredible score on a test he took in draft prep as well. So I thought that was an interesting thing that just stood out to me when I was looking at the board.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he's been prepping for it for 8 years.
I started thinking about it when you talked about Gabriel having been, like a 6-year college player. I was like, well, he's not the one. Oh, we didn't even draft the one that's been there since 2018.
Part of the difference between Gabriel and Tyler Shug is that, Shug missed a lot of games because of injury, like lots of time. I think Shug has, he's got the prototypical size. He's got the arm strength. If he panned out to be, a 4th or 5th round success, it's not gonna surprise anybody. Curtis Rourke is kind of the same thing. If he pans out to be they kind of profile right now as journeyman backups because they have good size. Rourke, 6'2", 214. Another guy who played in a lot of games, missed some time with injuries. So it's a weird class. It's the last of the COVID classes. Starting next year, these guys that we expect to come out sooner that stay, it's going to be because of NIL and maybe because of injuries. But that COVID year is going to be gone. Not a lot of running backs. I think, we're looking at wide receivers and tight ends kind of as your target throws in the fourth round. I think Kyle Williams is a guy that's starting to pick up some speed. It'll be interesting to see where he goes as a draft pick in the NFL. That may have some impact on his draft stock as far as fantasy football goes.
Yep. Well, it was fun getting in there, getting some drafting done, and getting to see where some of these values lie. We will have a couple of more mock drafts we're going to do on the Monday before the actual NFL drafts on April 21st. We'll put up one for a 1 QB league and one for another one for a super flex league, just to see where we are heading into the draft. So that'll be something fun to look forward to as we kind of spend this month looking at rookies, getting ready for the draft and the impact that that's going to have. But that'll wrap it up for today. We'll be back on Friday talking about rookie wide receivers. You saw some of the ones that went drafted here, so we will talk about our rankings and our tiers there. But we have a couple of days in between. If you're not like Dennis and you don't have a little baseball to go out to, maybe you're looking for something to fill your days, what can the people do?
Hopefully we're talking about a Memorial Jaguars winning streaks, what I hope. They can go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a like, leave us a rating and a review.
We will appreciate it. And remember, if you're looking for a little light reading, the rookie draft guide is out on Canvas to Canton site. Be worth checking that out so that you can see work from our friend Matt. And, hopefully we can get him to bounce on and talk some rookies with us here before too long. But until then, we will see you on Friday. Hope you guys have a wonderful week.